Hello and welcome to my podcast, Up Your Total Glow, your podcast for your body, mind, and soul to support, guide, and empower you to uncover your most glowing, healthiest, and feel good version of you. I am super excited that you're here because if you ask me, there's nothing that looks and feels better. In today's episode, I'm speaking with the amazing Logan Hufford. Logan is no longer in bondage to sexual addiction. He spent years actively destroying his marriage, his life, and the life of many others. He was an addict to pornography. And even though he was married to the love of his life, he destroyed his marriage and made their life pretty miserable. However, he empowered himself by changing. And he's now empowering others to help them live their best lives and break free from addiction. This is a really powerful and very beautiful interview. And for you, if you want to empower yourself or someone else who is struggling with addiction, please enjoy. Here he is, the amazing Logan Hufford. Hello and welcome, Logan. I'm so excited to have you here today. How are you?
I'm doing well, although I'm feeling a little hot, which is ironic because I'm in Alaska, but it's like low 70s. And one thing about Alaska is that we don't have infrastructure for heat. So if it's 70 plus, most places don't have AC. So it actually starts getting pretty warm. But other than being a little bit warm, I'm a little bit more warm than I would like. I'm feeling really good.
So funny. So for me, it's really hard to know what 70 degrees is in degrees
Oh,
Celsius.
with Fahrenheit.
Um,
Right.
but I'm guessing it's nothing compared to what I'm used to here in Australia. So we've got
Correct. I
Australian
mean, just,
winter. Um,
yeah.
and for me, like this temperature is freezing now. Like probably, I don't know if you are familiar with my temperature, like degrees and Celsius, but last night we had like 8 degrees. So that's so freezing for us. And then
Is that
it
below
will
freezing?
and then it will get up to 20 degrees during the day. So that's our
Okay.
winter.
Yeah. No, I got you. I also I'm the same. I don't know Celsius.
Yeah.
It I would say like so 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like a January or February day in Arizona probably is that so like that's their winter.
Yeah.
And but it's yeah, not only is there not the AC in most of the homes, and I mean pretty much any home, but also we literally do have complete sunlight for about a month and a half. So, the sun is just like baking, which is, I mean, I love it. But if you're in a second story house, the sun's just been baking that room all day long with that sunlight. So it is a little bit different than 70 degrees in, a normal area that doesn't have sunlight throughout the month of June.
Totally get it. And also, our bodies customize to the environment we are living in. So probably
Yeah.
because it is more cold where you're living and I'm guessing been living there for a longer time, your body
Yeah.
is like, I'm not used to this. So I really have to perspire to come back to my normal homeostatic self. I love though that you are not so equipped with, huge cooling systems because I think this actually tricks. I guess I understand why we have them. So we survive
Sure.
when it's really hot, like we have them here in Australia too. However, I prefer not to use them because it kind of tricks our bodies and doesn't help us to really um, understand, like what's truly going on. Like, so this huge heat wave, okay, what do we have to do so that our bodies can go through this heat wave the best they can? Like if you are in a
air conditioning zone all the time, and then going out in the heat, like the body is going like, what the heck? We were just freezing. Now it's super hot. But okay, this is not our topic today. Sorry, I get crazy on these things. So tell me, what are you passionate about? Why are you actually here today? Not to talk about the weather with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a meteorologist, and don't even play one on TV. I am passionate about recovery. I am passionate about helping people who might be in shoes that I was in 8, 9, 10 plus years ago, specifically struggling with sexual addiction and trapped in essentially a cave of an addiction where I got myself so trapped in a dysfunctional lifestyle, so trapped in these terrible, destructive, damaging habit cycles. And I felt like I've done too much. I've hurt too many people. I've been doing this for too long. There's no hope for me. There's no way out of this. And as much as I can, I want to try to give hope to other people, who might be in that spot currently. Because I remember very vividly what it was, by God's grace. I mean, it's been 8+ years since I've been in that, but I remember absolutely what it felt like to be in those shoes. So right now I am just trying to shout from the rooftops that there is hope, even if somebody's in that spot.
That's so awesome. I love that, because I do think addiction is such an obviously important topic, but also something that so many more people struggle with than we even know. So just hearing about other people, even if it might be in different ways, I think is very empowering. And then also seeing that you felt like you were not able to get out of this. You felt kind of, it sounds to me, please correct me if I'm wrong, this is an assumption, but you felt kind of helpless and there's nothing you can do anymore. Maybe your life doesn't make much sense anymore. You have destroyed everything. And look at you now. You are empowering others. So you have empowered yourself. You have stepped out of this. You have somehow recovered. And now you're even helping others. So I think this is super empowering. And I would love to hear more about, first, how did you stumble into this? Because I feel addiction is something that kind of creeps up on us. We like stumble in it, and there's a point where it's still fine. We feel we've got it under control, and all of a sudden, actually, we don't. And then we are already huge in it. And then I would like to hear, how did you empower yourself, man?
Yeah. I have kind of two, they're not necessarily conflicting, but there's two different schools of thought that kind of prevail in my mind when it comes to, at least for me. I mean, I use a lot of I statements. I mean, part of that's because it's my personal experience, but I also, like, I'm not here to preach. I'm not here to convince anyone of their stuff. I'm here to share my story and the experience that God has given me, and take that for what you will, right? My journey into addiction, and I always liken it to a cave. This cave of addiction, this cave of being trapped. So on one hand, I put myself into that cave. I absolutely believe this. My addiction did not put me there. My addictive personality did not put me there. No disease made me do things against my will. And yet it's also true. So I guess to finish that thought, I took steps over the course of years, deeper and deeper and deeper into this cave. So like, I put myself there. That's one thing. And yet at the same time, it's also true that, at some point I found myself stuck in a cave, and I'm going, okay, I hate this cave. I don't want to be in this cave. I don't know how to get out of this cave. And then the sobering thought of, I don't think I can get out of this cave. So both things are true. Like this idea that there was a powerlessness, there was an inability to I couldn't just flip a toggle switch off. but it's also, I take a lot of ownership over, I made my choices. I hurt people. My addiction didn't hurt people. Logan hurt people. Um, and as far as, the addiction being sneaky, addiction kind of sneaking in, I definitely agree with that. And again, not to shift blame onto, anything other than, I made my choices, but I completely didn't realize what I was doing to myself. Looking back on it, I mean, I'll give you the hyper speed, kind of aerial view of this. 9-year-old Logan looking at lingerie photos in a JCPenney catalog. So like not even porn by any definition of porn, right?
Yeah.
And yet I do treat that as, that was my introduction to porn, because that was the first time I sexually objectified a picture of a woman.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, yeah, that was my introduction to porn.
Yeah.
So that's me, 9 years old, right? And then within a couple years, I go from there, still photos online of basically the same thing, still photos, non-videos of lingerie and bikinis, or women in lingerie and bikinis. And then a couple years late, and so all this time, I don't know what sex is. I don't know what masturbation is. I don't know what to do with myself. I certainly don't understand any sort of chemistry going on in my head and my body overall. I just know I liked how I felt.
Yeah.
And then as a young teen, I learned how to masturbate. And then I'm like, okay, well now I can do something with these feelings. So then it just skyrocketed. Now I'm chasing. I was already training myself in the sense that everything I do trains myself, right? Like if I go to take a drink of water, I'm training myself drinking water is a good thing, even if it's a small bit of training, right? If I go, buy a rock star on the way home at the gas station, I'm training myself that buying an energy drink is a good thing. Most of those decisions that I make day to day are not huge life-changing decisions, at least not in and of themselves, right? And in a lot of my decisions, at least in the moment, I thought of like that. Well, and that's not true that I thought of it like that. I didn't think about it at all, but it would be easy for me to look back on and be like, okay, well, these were pretty small choices. I wasn't hurting anyone, right? I was just, just experimenting, just looking at things. But I was training myself to chase after images of women, to chase after the feeling that I got.
Yeah.
But then when masturbation was introduced, now I've got a whole other set of chemical things going on, right? And so now I've got this high is now like on steroids.
Yeah.
Because now I'm gluing myself biologically. There's a glue happening here with me and these behaviors, and training myself to chase after new behaviors.
Yeah.
And that continued for several years of basically though I certainly wouldn't have understood it as a sexual addiction, my sexual addiction manifested itself at that point primarily as me, whenever I had the opportunity, which was not super often. I lived in a sheltered, not in a bad way, but just sheltered, safe, conservative home where there was no porn easily accessible. But when I could, I would, get on the computer and look at porn and masturbate to videos. I was always insecure. During that time, I was always shy around girls, not around other people, but around girls my age. I was very shy. Always felt like I was ugly. Didn't think that girls would like me. But then in my older teen years, I started to fish. I started to put things out there and see like, okay, I can get the attention of girls. Some girls do like me. And again, like in and of itself, there's a lot that somebody from the outside would look at and be like, well, that's normal. That's innocent. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not going to argue whether that, can be totally fine or not. But for me, it was part of this. It was part of this destructive cycle where I would seek out whatever attention I could get from any girl. I was going to say woman. At this point, it was girls. I'm 17, 18 years old. Any female in my path, a little bit of flirting, a little bit of attention. If I could get a girl to break her plans that she had previously to hang out with me, I mean, that was like an ultimate thing because I was developing already these power and control dynamics, trying to get other people to bend to my will, even though I didn't recognize any of this at that time. And so the first 19 years of my life, if you were to look at me, you're an alien observing this human specimen, more than likely you'd probably go, okay, it's got a lot of behaviors that are pretty darn normal for a teenage guy. Looks at this thing called porn, likes the attention of girls. Hey, what's the big deal? What I didn't realize that this whole time I was planting these seeds. This whole time I was planting and watering these seeds of, I want more attention. I want to chase after new and different. I want the high that comes from a girl giving me attention, or maybe it's not a girl giving me attention, maybe it's porn, whatever, but I want that high that comes from that. And all these things, all these seeds were these little plants were growing, and their root systems were growing rapidly, but there wasn't a whole lot showing above the surface. And then skipping ahead a little bit, I mean, I got married at 20. I was almost 21 when I married my wife. She was 21. I was 20.
Wow, that's very early.
We got married pretty young. We started having kids young. We had our first boy, Elijah, 11 months after we got married.
Wow.
Well, when I said I do to my wife on June 4th, 2011, I had cheated on my wife multiple times. And then over the next 5 years, I went on to have even more affairs. Porn was a constant maintenance drug, essentially. I was flirting with basically every woman I came in contact with. Got to the point where I was hiring prostitutes, phone sex lines, just whatever I could get to get any sort of a high. And I realized, again, I'm like, this is the very zoomed out version. But I mean, it got to this point where I didn't know a different way to live. And again, I'm not blaming it, but I trained myself. I got myself into this point where I didn't know a different way to live other than to chase after the high that came from sexual attention, sexual behavior, all of these different things. And I do emphasize that point too. Sexual addiction, at least in my experience, it's not an addiction to sex. It's an addiction to the high that I get from impulsively and compulsively chasing after inappropriate sexual behaviors.
Yeah.
So, when I said earlier, self-hatred, hopelessness, despair, ruled my life. Not an exaggeration. I'm 23, 24, 25 years old. I've got kids. I'm married. I've got this beautiful family that looks incredible on a Christmas card. And every day I'm choosing my addiction. I'm choosing sin. I'm choosing lust. I'm choosing other things. I'm choosing selfishness over my family. And then coming home, and trying to compartmentalize and protect this double life so that I can try to have some semblance of sanity, so I can give my wife a hug, so I can kiss my boys goodnight. It was an absolutely terrible several years.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think this was so beautifully explained or shared. And I feel, many who have struggled with addiction or who struggle with addiction can relate to so many things that you have said. What I think is incredibly powerful, how you now, and I believe this is different to how it was then, but you can tell me later, how you are now able to take complete ownership of what was going on and also have this complete awareness. And I feel these two things are probably, when we are not able to tap into these, it kind of keeps us away from changing, from transforming what we are now doing, because we are in this, it feels like an automated behavior that is just evolving and developing in the wrong direction, and we feel so out of control.
Yes. You said it feels almost like it's automatic or automated, and that's a perfect description of at least my experience of addiction. That's the perfect description. it's not automatic,
Yeah.
but it felt automatic.
Yeah.
And the way I describe it to guys that, so I lead recovery groups. My wife leads group, and we'll get to that part of the story later. But
Yes,
I mean, recovery is our life, and it's been that way for 8 years. And I don't plan on, and my wife doesn't plan on it ever not being our life, because this is the greatest gift that we've been given on this earth.
Yeah.
And so, it's our life. But the way I explain it to my guys, it's like I'm zooming down when I'm in my addiction. I'm zooming down this freeway, and it almost feels like I'm in a self-driving car going 100 miles an hour, and I can't touch the brakes. I can't steer. I can't do anything. Sometimes the car might slow down a little bit. Sometimes the car might pass by some better scenery, but like I can't do hardly anything. I'm just along for this terrible ride.
Mm-hmm.
And then I zoom in and I slow it down, and I see not only am I driving that car, but there's also there now. I might butcher. We live in places where terms are different and roads are different, but there's going to be off ramps.
Yeah.
There's off ramps constantly. There's constant opportunities for me to stop the car, for me to get out of the car, for me to get on a different road. But I don't see those things when I'm in my addiction. I don't see those off ramps. The amount of things that, when I was in my addiction, I didn't see that there were other options. I didn't see that there were other choices. And now, when I'm working with a guy, it's I have to like constantly, in a healthy way, put myself back into those old shoes. Recognize, like, he doesn't see the choices he has. There's give an example, like maybe so I sold cars for 6 years, and primarily me acting out in my addiction, me preying on women to get, whatever I could get from a woman, primarily, almost exclusively, that came through people that I was, clients that I was selling cars to in the car business.
Mm-hmm.
So the obvious thing there would be, dude, get out of the car business. Now, that wouldn't necessarily fix all these things, but that would be a start. That would be like one giant piece, right? Is why don't I go do a different job where I'm not constantly dealing with new people every day and exchanging cell phone numbers and all this stuff. That wasn't an option to me. Of course it was, but that wasn't an option to Addict Logan, because this is what I do, and it's good money, and this, that, and the other. Like that was a giant off ramp that was available to me the whole time. Changing my phone number was an off ramp that was available to me. Let alone things that actually would, none of that would have transformed my life or given me healing. Those are just possible corrective measures. Mm-hmm. The idea of actually going through a rigorous recovery program, inviting guys into my life. Now those, I won't say that those were off ramps that I passed by, because I truly, I didn't think that was possible. That's almost like, that was an off ramp that I hadn't passed yet. It was headed a few miles down the road, and I couldn't fathom that was possible, because I didn't think it was possible for a guy like me to experience healing. I know that was kind of a rant, but
no, that's awesome.
Such a giant part of addiction is it feels automatic, but it is not.
Yeah. And I think this is so important. So I'm grateful for this rant that you went just on, because I feel this is exactly what's going on the inside of each and everyone who is experiencing any kind of addiction. And to me, this is what I tried to describe in the beginning with, they feel kind of that the addiction has handcuffed them. They don't feel empowered anymore. Yes, you're right. They still have the responsibility. They still make the choices, but I don't think they are able to experience it like that. This ownership kind of is, at this moment in time, not really there. Not excusing the behavior.
It's a tricky, almost paradox. It's this tricky dichotomy of both things are true. I have to accept blame and take ownership, and yet I also recognize that I always liken it to, there wasn't a switch that I could just flip off. There wasn't just a button I could push and boom, I'm not an addict anymore. It took a ton of time and a ton of hard work.
Yeah.
And it took other people.
Yeah. And I think when we feel like that, when we feel so helpless, or there's no help for me. There's no recovery for me. Like the only way is to drive on, which is, I think all of this is part of the addiction, because as we know, also chemicals in the brain are changing. And what I see in my clients who are struggling mostly with different forms of addiction, we can go into this later, like food, alcohol, it's that it's this helplessness which really keeps them stuck in that addiction. And I find this so sad. And then something really drastic needs to happen, like for them to wake up, like they need a wake up call, which kind of is bigger than it feels like I can't get out of this. Does this make sense? Like something really drastic needs for them, so they kind of wake up and want to step out, even if they still think they can't do it. But it's so urgent, it's so drastic. And this is so sad to me, because obviously so much more has happened, so much more imbalance in their bodies, and it would have been so much easier before, but obviously everyone their own journey. So I'm curious to hear, was there a wake-up call for you, or
Yeah, there was. And I hope this isn't bad form, but Craig Brown, who I really respect, he's an incredible voice of recovery, addiction recovery. And something he says is, Craig, I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. The pain of my addiction, until the pain of my addiction outweighs the fear of reaching out and getting help, then I'm not going to get help, right? The pain has to outweigh the fear. And in my opinion, that's a much more accurate way to describe, this idea of rock bottom, because I can have a rock bottom, but it becomes like this misnomer, because my rock bottom is not going to be this other guy's rock bottom.
Excuse me.
You're good. So, one person's rock bottom is oftentimes drastically different than someone else's rock bottom. I think about it from like an alcoholic standpoint. One person might, be drunk at the wheel and kill someone and go to prison, and that's their rock bottom.
Yeah. And
that's what we might think of as like a stereotypical rock bottom. Like, that's a terrible thing, right? Somebody else has that experience and they're right back doing it again, when they get out, or when they're behind the wheel again. Yeah. And somebody else might have a rock bottom experience that is, I had one too many drinks at my kid's softball game, and I yelled at another, person in the stands, and I was so embarrassed I never had another drink. Like, those are drastically different versions of rock bottom. Yeah. And yet each of those could totally be a rock bottom. So because fear affects us all differently, pain affects us all differently, right? So when the pain outweighed my fear, or the pain outweighed my, like, I was frozen by despair, frozen by hopelessness is another way to put it. That was in the summer of 2015, either end of July or start of August, because during the entire month of July, I had an affair, yet another affair. And my wife would tell you, and this says a lot coming from her mouth, it was the most painful affair that I ever carried out, and for a few different reasons. But backing up, I would confess when I would have an affair. I would confess to her. I would, eating me up, right? And I'd feel so bad, and I'm so sorry. I did it again, and I would just vomit it out. Totally not repentant, not changing my ways. In the moment, I felt repentant. I truly did hate that I did it, and I truly did kind of sort of feel like I'll never do it again. But of course, the infrastructure of my decision making never changed. So this whole time, she is getting hit with these confessions, these staggered confessions, she is getting essentially stabbed by her husband, every few months, again and again and again. Meanwhile, remember, we've got 4 kids. She's in survival mom mode. She's trying to change diapers and cook dinner and, sweep up the floors. And the idea of how to be safe and how to be healthy and how to respond to an addict. I mean, nobody should have to be prepared for that. Well, definitely a young mom with multiple little babies. Yeah, she was not prepared for, to know how to respond to that. Right.
Yeah.
But finally in the summer of 2015, she said something that she never had said or done before. And she gave me an ultimatum. She goes, if you don't get serious help, I will be gone. You will lose me and the kids. We didn't know what that would look like, but I started to do some things. And I always emphasize, started to do some things is super weak verbiage, but it is accurate verbiage. That's what I did. I started to reach out and put myself out there. I went to some groups. I tried some things. There was a lot of half-assing it. There was a lot of doing the bare minimum and checking the boxes. And on one hand, even the bare minimum felt like drastic change because I'd never really done anything before. But on the other hand, there was still a lot of selfishness, a lot of, okay, I'll see what I can do to make you happy kind of thing so you don't leave. So it was a total nonlinear journey. I mean, the whole thing is nonlinear, but especially that year, because my sobriety date is May 19th, 2016. That's almost a year after the ultimatum. I wasn't having sexual affairs in that time, but I would have a bad day at work and look at porn. I would a lot less often, but I still, there would be times where I would, totally blow past any boundaries and, send a flirty text to a customer. I was still very, very much unhealthy, but I was on this, just the seesaw, this roller coaster ride of trying to do some things. And I've had people ask why didn't your wife leave you? And totally fair question, because even though I wasn't having sexual affairs, I still wasn't being totally healthy. Right. On one hand, I think she did, she saw that there were some changes. She did see that I was trying to get help, but also again, she wasn't, she was still just figuring out how to be a healthy person. Right. She was still just figuring out how to respond to a sexual addict. Right. So I'm playing around, I'm doing the bare minimum, checking the boxes. And I met a guy in the winter of 2015, 2016. It was around New Year's. And I'd gone to a couple different groups. And I was at this group that was kind of surfacey. There were good things about it, but there wasn't necessarily a lot of hope. There were some nice people there. But everyone else was substance or grief or, just other things. Yeah. Except one guy, older guy, about my dad's age. And he and I were the only 2 guys there that, said, I'm a recovering sex addict. And he came up to me after the group and he was like, hey, I'm glad you're here. That's cool that you're here. Appreciate you sharing. You need something more. He's like, I needed something more. He introduced himself. His name was Rick. He goes, I needed something more. And, it's this group called Prodigals. I think you should go to that group. He's like, it's the hardest thing I ever did, but I think it might be what you need. Because one thing about most recovery groups, and if I haven't made it clear, I love recovery. I am extremely passionate about recovery. And I don't care what you're in recovery for. I have ultimate respect for anyone in recovery, anyone who is seeking healing, who is seeking to work on their stuff. But not all recovery groups are created equal. Not all organizations are created equal. They're only as strong as the people leading them and what they believe in my opinion.
Yeah.
And most recovery groups, they value safe spaces, which is totally, you have to have a safe space. It has to be safe enough and anonymous enough for me to be vulnerable, right? But they value safe spaces to such a degree that safety sometimes gets exchanged for a comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these groups, what I would do is I could show up and I could share maybe kind of, some of the truth and then some lies or some BS. Maybe I would share the full truth that week. Maybe I would totally lie. But you were not allowed to give me feedback. You're not allowed to ask me tough questions. You're not allowed to, call me to the carpet. So, if people said anything, that kind of verbal pat on the back and, hey, good, appreciate you sharing. Thanks, Logan. But they weren't allowed to call me out on stuff. And so this group prodigals, there's a few differences, but that was a huge difference, or I should say is, because that's the group that I'm still a part of, and I lead a chapter out where I live now. This group, so it's a Christ-centered 12-step recovery group. But it also, unlike Celebrate Recovery, which is also Christ-centered, this group, it's all about accountability. It's all about rigorous honesty. It's all about feedback, healthy feedback, loving feedback. I joke to guys all the time now. I was like, trust me, the paycheck's not that good to be here. I'm not here because it's so much fun and just because I'm here to help. So if feelings get hurt, if somebody gets offended, that's not what I'm trying to do, right? Nobody was trying to hurt my feelings. But sometimes feelings got hurt, sometimes I got annoyed, sometimes I get frustrated, but that's okay. In fact, the most impactful, I think probably the most impactful, it was definitely the first time somebody had a complete impact in my life in this way, was something that my mentor Rick said way before he was my mentor. So he was talking about this group prodigals, we'd exchanged some words. This was after we'd seen each other a few times. And I was still kind of keeping him at arm's length. I'm like, I don't think I need anything super, super crazy intense. And I was like, Rick, could we get together for coffee every now and again and talk about stuff? And in my mind, I'm really putting myself out there. I'm like, I'm trying for something. Yeah. And he looked at me, and Rick is one of the most loving, generous people that I know. Rick looked at me and he said, Logan, if you want to get together for coffee every now and again, I don't have time for you. And that hurt my feelings. That was offensive to me. And yet he quickly followed up. He's like, if you want to work on things, I will walk with you. But it's not going to be getting together at a coffee shop for, a couple times a month. It's going to be hard work. You're not going to like it. Probably not going to like me. But that's what it's going to take. And he followed through on that. I mean, he walked with me, hand to hand, basically, for 2 years in a voluntary, essentially a house arrest program, not from a legal standpoint. I still lived at my address with my wife and everything, with my kids, but I had a lot of freedom stripped away. It was a super intense program, and he would remind me, he's like, you're giving up a lot of freedoms right now, Logan, so that you can have actual freedom, true freedom for the rest of your life.
I love it. I love it. There is so much in you said. Sorry for interrupting, but I just would like to say a few things. So number one, I 100% agree with you that true transformation, true change is only possible if we actually combine the two. The safety or the love, that's where we really feel we can open up, we have the safe zone, and the challenge. Like my work as a coach, if I just all the time love and love and love, there is no reason to go further. There needs to be the challenge, and it just needs to be the right balance. So I think this is absolutely fantastic. I have a question for you, and you kind of answered it while you were talking, but I want to ask back just to be sure, because in my experience, like the first step is always the hardest, like they actually reaching out to someone, like to actually say, okay, I want to change, even if maybe they are not quite ready and they are not yet giving it 100%. Or this is what I've always thought, how it felt to me. But you kind of said, like, you started the change and then you did the hardest thing. So can you just let me know, is the first step just reaching out easier and then truly committing is the hardest thing? Or is it maybe like you are already transforming and everything kind of not happens because you're creating this yourself, but when you are ready for it? Tell me your thoughts. I'm curious.
This is one of those times where the part of me that wants to be liked, the part of me that wants to give a good answer is like, man, I just want to like give you this perfectly sculpted. This moment was the hardest moment, you know, whether it's at the start or in the and I don't know what the hardest moment was. There were different types of hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying, it's not a cop out. Just like I said, you know, there's different types of pain, right? Different types of fear.
Yeah.
There were different types of hard. I vividly remember the first meeting I went to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll paint that picture real quick. I mean, it was so my wife dropped me off. I got out of the minivan. Her and the 4 boys are in the minivan. They dropped me off at this church. I mean, honestly, it was like the stereotypical, like an AA meeting, except it was Sex Addicts Anonymous. But it's like the stereotypical thing from a movie, right? So like I walk across this parking lot that, and I'm not exaggerating. It was a big parking lot, but it felt like I walked about a mile, you know, to get from the parking spot to the church.
Yeah.
And, you know, definitely was nervous. Definitely was like feelings of embarrassment. Like, what am I going to find down there? Like, is it going to be a bunch of like greasy weirdos on like, that are like on a watch list? Like which even then, like, think about how messed up my thinking was, right? I had done all this crap for years, and yet I was still judging other people that might be at this meeting.
Yeah.
But that's where my mind was. Yeah. So, you know, and I followed the signs, and it's like, you know, downstairs in the basement, wood grain on all the walls. And, you know, it was a small group of guys. I think there were 4 guys at that meeting. And that was kind of the core that usually was there. That was not the hardest moment. That was hard. It was a tough pill to swallow. But pretty much as soon as I said like, hey, I'm here for sexual addiction meeting, like that pretty much that broke the seal, and boom, I felt pretty comfortable. That's not going to be everyone's experience. Totally get that.
Yeah.
But that was not the hardest thing I did. I don't know what the hardest thing was that I did. I'll tell you the time that I wanted to quit. And that was actually, it was in my program. I had experienced some sobriety. I had experienced some traction. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember the date. I don't remember if it was a month in or 6 months in. Mm-hmm. It was within the first year. But I remember this feeling of like, okay, I've gotten some coins. I've gotten some sobriety. I've gone through some of the steps, but I don't know if I'm any different. I don't know if, like, am I just going through the motions or what's going on here? And that was, and I remember I was talking to a brother, because one of the parts about our program, I mean, this is beyond what we believe in, beyond the steps, beyond belief in Christ. On a practical level, in my opinion, the most important tool that I used in recovery, that we use in this program, is it's a requirement that I have to make a phone call every single day to somebody else in the program. So outgoing phone call, not receiving. And I have to share how my day has been since the previous phone call, stressors, fears, stuff I've done wrong, all this. And I was on the phone with the brother. Can picture him. I mean, I couldn't picture him on the phone, but I remember who it was. And I remember just telling him, like, man, I just want to quit. And he grilled me. And I mean, I'll just summarize it. He was like, Logan, you can share a lot of things with me. He's like, but your wife's hanging on, your kids are hanging on. He's like, you can share anything with me. I don't ever want to hear the words, Logan wants to quit. Do not quit. And that always sticks in my mind. So it wasn't a singular moment that was the hardest moment. But that was a time where I remember just feeling like, I don't know if anything has changed.
I really love that answer. Sorry for interrupting again. I really love that answer, because I think you are so right that there are so different and so many forms of hard. And I think this is really important to say. So thank you so much for saying that. And I also love what you shared then, because, and you said that right at the beginning already, but it's so true. And now you've explained it even more with your story. Like, transformation is not linear. It just is not. And I see it so often that there is some kind of relapse that needs to happen, so that then they can experience that this is actually not who I am anymore and how I want to feel anymore, and then fully move forward. I mean, even better if they don't fall into the relapse, but
Right.
and that's what happened with you, because
Kind
you
of
had
catch myself crossing over a boundary or three, and I'm starting to slide back into old Logan.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I mean, once I got in the program, I didn't relapse again. I didn't have another sexual affair, masturbate to pornography, which is like our definition of that's a relapse.
Yeah.
But I totally made stupid decisions still.
Yeah.
But the stupid decisions, I want to be really careful how I say this. The types of decisions that I made, they became the collateral damage that came from the stupid decisions that I made, it lessened over time.
Yeah.
And the frequency, between stupid decisions, right, that went down.
Yeah.
So like something that I would do 6 months into the program, I mean, there were times where I still was like, I'm a couple bad decisions away from full on relapse and losing my family.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like there's still times where, I go on Facebook and there's an ad and, and I don't bounce away for like the first half second or something like that. And whereas normally like I just immediately skip past and like, okay, why did I do that? Like, why would I let that sit there for a half second? And I report that stuff. I mean, I'm constantly ingrained in accountability. So it's like the types, still a decision that's not ideal, still a decision that's not based in healthy thinking, but it's a far cry from, dang, like I'm in this spot where I'm almost to the point of completely blowing this whole thing wide open.
Yeah. And I think this is really powerful, how you shared it, because, it showed that we are able to heal, we are able to change. It also shows that no, you are not perfect, you are human, and you're not making out to be this superhuman. You're very, relatable, reproachable, which I think, or for me, is really important. I think it's really, really beautiful how you shared this. There are a few more questions that I have for you. I hope we are going okay with your time. Do you have stuff? Yeah. Okay. Right.
I'm good. Yep.
Okay. So, what can we do to actually, help others? What can we change in our society to minimize these normal or seemingly normal things that actually for some people can lead to addiction if they are not aware of what's going on, and don't have the power to hold themselves responsible right now, which is so hard, if we don't have the awareness. Because, food, any kind of food, is completely legal. We still have no real, at least in most countries that I'm aware of, no real limitations, boundaries around sugar, around alcohol. Yeah, so it's around food coloring, it's like, it's so addictive. And I see so many people who are truly addicted to food, and they believe there's something wrong with themselves. And this is another thing I wanted to say. I think it is really important, and that's what you said when you shared it, to make clear that change isn't like this huge jump that you make overnight.
Right.
It takes
tomorrow I'm healthy, but yesterday I wasn't. Kind of thing.
Exactly. And it takes lots of little steps. And it's okay that, as long as you are moving forward, and moving forward sometimes comes in a little circle. But as long as you keep trying, truly trying, honestly, in your heart, trying, you're doing great. And it's not, it doesn't have to be, well, it's hard, but it's not as hard as you make it out in your mind. What I'm trying to say is I want to take away, because when you stand before this huge mountain and you feel like you can't change, it's too hard, and you don't have the self-confidence at the moment because you feel in your body that what you've done is shit, and you probably have created collateral damage, as you explained. So I want to make sure that we make this not sound too hard. Like, yes, any kind of change needs commitment and is hard, but I feel, staying the same is so much harder than actually doing it.
Choose your hard, right?
Exactly.
Do I want to be the 50-year-old guy that doesn't have relationships with my kids anymore? I certainly don't have a good relationship with my wife anymore. And I've just got pain and heartache. Like, I could have that hard, or I could have, in my case, the hard of no camping trips for 2 years and sending a selfie to my mentor every time I went to work and went to lunch, because that's what he required, at least, or like those were literal examples. Both things would be hard. Yeah. I'll take one over the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just really quick. So I want to respond to that. But one thing you mentioned, totally had a brain fart.
Can relate to that.
Give me a quick second.
Yeah. Gone. That's completely.
As my mentor always says, if it was that important, I would have remembered it. So.
Oh, it will come back, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so just really being clear on that, taking it in little steps, kind of surpasses the mountain, and also the things that you feel you could have never done before you know it. So I'm not saying like it's super quick and it's super easy, but at some point you're looking back and you're like, wow, I'm already here, truly. Yeah. So, and this is really important to me to bring this message across, and it's okay to take little steps. Little steps are so powerful. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple things that come to mind here.
Yeah.
The first one, full disclosure, this was actually not a conversation I had with somebody in recovery. This was for a living, I do personal finance coaching. And so that's what I do in my day job. But I mean, even then I'm always clear with my clients, like, you're not going to be impressed by diplomas I have or any letters after my name. My experience, it comes from working in recovery and working with people in behavioral change. And I carry that over to finances. But so I was talking with a client, and this was somebody this was in the onboarding process. And she goes, there's huge crossover, as you alluded to, right? With other issues in life. There's so much crossover in recovery from addiction and spending issues. And she was like, I just want to know, like, how hard are you going to be? Like, how are you going to be mean? She goes, like, what if I fail? And I tried to be, we didn't have relational equity at that point, hardly at all. So I wanted to be gracious and everything, but I did try to lean into that a little bit. And I said, well, depends on what your definition of failure is. Now I'm not going to respond in a mean way, no matter what, but I'm not, because she said, are you going to be disappointed in me if I fail? I was like, well, it depends on what your definition of failure is. Because if failure is making a choice that's unhealthy, no. Why would I be disappointed in you? I'm your coach. That's my job, is to help you.
Yeah.
Now, if failure is quitting and never showing up again, even then, I'm not going to be mean to you.
Yeah.
I might feel disappointment.
Yeah.
But to me, that's failure.
Yeah.
So, and this circles back to what you said earlier. Though I totally get what you're saying as far as the relapse idea, and I would agree with you. Like, hopefully it's not a full relapse, but even then, like, failure would be never getting back to the group, right? Failure would
Giving
be
up on
never
yourself.
confessing that to the mentor.
Yeah.
Failure is like, well, I'm screwed. I quit
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
That's failure. So in the changes, the changes are small, and it's like standing here watching this tree grow in my yard. I could sit there all day. I don't see growth.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I could sit there for a week and not see growth. But over time, I see tremendous growth, right?
Yeah.
And that's one reason. And sometimes I get pushback from people in and outside of recovery on this. I love sobriety coins, and I think that everyone's brain works a little bit differently, and not everyone's motivated the same way. For me, they meant a lot, because I spoke of those days sometimes where, like, early in my program, where I felt like, I don't know if I'm any different. I don't know if there's been any change. Like, yes, I haven't done fill in the blank for so long, but like, I don't know if it's actually real. So that was something where being able to go and get a 6-month coin, to get a 1-year coin, screw that, to get a 30-day coin the first month, right? Like, that was tremendous success compared to what my life had been. So I needed a tangible reminder that I'm different. I'm not fixed. I'm not perfect, but I'm not the old guy that I used to be. And I always, now that I've read the book, I didn't know it in recovery, but Atomic Habits, I love that book. And so, like, it's clear, right? The identity piece. Because, like, even if all I have is a 30-day coin, if all I have is a 1-day coin, I have the identity that says, I'm the type of guy that goes to recovery. I'm the type of guy that is accountable. I'm the type of guy that confesses even if I do something wrong. I'm not the type of guy who has secrets and has a double life and who willingly hurts people and hides it, right? And even if I screw up and make a bad choice, I can still choose that identity that says, I go to recovery meetings, I'm accountable, I choose to surround myself with healthy people.
Amazing. Logan, I could talk to you forever. I feel there's still so much I want to know and speak with you about, but we have to come to an end. I think it was really, really powerful what you shared just then, about the fear of failure, the fear of success. In this case, it was fear of her disappointing you. And I can so relate in my practice as a coach to that. I've got so many clients who like, I'm not sure if I can truly change, and no, I'd rather not do it. And then obviously it's upon me to coach the client there to start. And that's what you did. So often it's truly our disbelief in ourselves, our distrust in ourselves, which should all be there. It hurts me that, things happen and then we, lose the belief in ourselves, the trust in ourselves. If you have a quick answer to the question I had before, is there something we can do in little things to protect our teens, to protect anyone, against addiction from porn, for example? Have you got ideas?
Yeah. Again, I'm like, I wish I had the perfect answer, especially as a dad of 4 boys. I have some answers. So in terms of kids, in terms of teens, our oldest is 12 to 8. So we had 4 kids in 5 years. Here's what we're doing. And I'm not here to say, like, just like I was the world's best parent when I was 18 with no kids. I'm not trying to be that, that guy. So I'm not saying we've got it figured out, but here's what we do with our kids. And it is done with a lot of intentionality, and there's a lot of thought behind it. Number one, we do everything we can to keep that conversation going.
Yeah.
I had a buddy at the gym. He's like, hey man, because his son's a little bit younger than mine. He's like, hey, have you given your son the talk? And we had a good conversation about it, but I did emphasize, I was like, well, like, we didn't give him the talk. We have the talk. Like, we talk about it. We talk about stuff,
That's an important difference.
Right. And and again, I don't say that from a place of hubris. I say that I'm trying to learn.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn what it is to
Yeah.
have that conversation and keep that conversation going. And just big picture, you know, whether it's about sex or about anything, just, you know, I just want my boys to always be able to talk to me and to my wife, Carrie, and just about stuff that they're going through and mistakes that they make and this, that, and the other. But also, so I mean, because the answer that kept going through my mind, like, what can we do? I mean, there's lots of things we could do, but I try to focus on what can I do, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, I could spend all day long talking about the evils of the porn industry. I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
But what I can do to influence things is with our boys, the next generation, they have been able to grow up. So, on one hand, all 4 of our boys were born in an addict's house. That's a heck of a thing.
Yeah.
And yet, all 4 of our boys are now being raised and have been raised in a house of recovery.
Yeah.
Every Monday night, they go to recovery with us. They go to, there's childcare there. And so they call it night church. And when they were little, they're just like, well, we're just going to church because it's the same building as where we go on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
And yet all 4 of our boys on some level, like the oldest knows more than the youngest, but all 4 of them know our story.
Yeah.
All 4 of them know on some level the things that I've done to their mom.
Awesome.
And so there's not going to be a day where they suddenly turn a certain age and they find out, oh my gosh, you had this whole life and you did all this stuff. And it's certainly not to, you know, glorify any of that, but it's like, but that stuff happened. And here's what we did to work through it. Here's what your mom did to work through sexual betrayal trauma. Here's what I did to work through sexual addiction. Again, not getting into all the nitties and gritties with them, but just letting them know, like, there's no stigma around recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Recovery is not for broken, yucky people. Recovery is for anyone that needs healing. Which is everyone.
For anyone who wants healing. Absolutely. And I love it. You're amazing. And it's all about having that conversation, keeping the communication open and going. Fantastic. You have given us so much insights, so much wisdom. I truly appreciate the conversation we had. I truly appreciate you. You're amazing. Where can my audience find you, Logan?
So on Instagram, it's at no longer in bondage. There's periods in between the words. My name, Logan Hufford. You can also, you know, search that either way, but please, you know, give me a follow there. I put out pretty consistent content, and a lot of it is, you know, as I've said multiple times, I'm not here to preach. So, like, it's not necessarily going to be directed at, like, here's things that you need to do. Here's things that it's a lot of it's, hey, here's what I did. Here's what worked. This is not stuff that somebody wrote about in a book that's theoretical. It's like, no, here's what worked for me, but also a lot of other people. So on Instagram, there's a lot of content there. And, you know, if somebody does want to reach out because they're struggling with stuff, absolutely, I will respond to a message. If we can get on a phone call, I'll get on a phone call. I don't do this for a living. But I'm not joking. When I said recovery is my life, it is my life.
You're amazing.
And at the same time, if somebody, you know, maybe if you are blessed to not struggle with sexual addiction or addiction at all, like, that's awesome. I promise you, you have a lot of people in your life who do. So, you know, there's other resources, whether it be on my page, and I can also refer people to resources to learn about sexual addiction, to learn about what it is to live with an addict, whether it's your spouse, it's your parent, it's, you know, your brother, your sister. Just please reach out, whether it be to me or to someone. I'm just me. I'm not the expert of all experts, but I'm just me.
Luckily, you are you. I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Okay, I like to finish my interview with 3 gold nuggets. And I know you've given us so much, but if you could please just summarize in very quick statements the 3 most important, empowering things that you would recommend is a strong word, but that you would like to share with my audience so that they feel empowered.
Can you give me just a quick second?
Sure.
Okay. So 3 golden nuggets, that's a big term. 3 statements that I would put out there to somebody seeking wisdom. The first one, and this is like the 6th time I've said it. I'm always going to say this. Not here to preach. I'm not here to convince, but I believe this wholeheartedly, and so I'm going to speak the truth, which is, in my opinion, true healing that comes through salvation, that comes through Jesus Christ, and I absolutely believe that. I believe that I can help in a lot of areas through sobriety, through tools. But I do believe that like true healing and transformation for me came through that. The second piece within recovery specifically is, because I always get asked like, well, how do I find a group, or how do I build an accountability infrastructure? How do I find healthy people? Yeah. And it's going to look different for every person, right? If you live in a big city, it's going to look one way. If you live in a small town, but no matter what, find people, whether it's a recovery group, a therapist, somebody at your church, your neighbor. Find someone who is not just nice, who's not just healthy. Those are good. Yeah. Somebody who has been in your shoes on some level, and they're further down the path. They've got the type of life that you would want to have. That is a crucial piece to this, because every group's created differently. But when I went to Prodigals, I saw a lot of guys that had been in my shoes, that had done the kind of crap I'd done, and they had lives and marriages that I'm like, I don't know what they had to do to get that, but I'm willing to sign up for it.
Yeah.
And then the third piece, it's totally connected to that second one, but I have to reach out. I have to make an effort. I can't wait. Whether that's first starting out, finding a group, well, I'm definitely going to have to reach out. I'm not going to have a recovery group just, walk up to my door and be like, hey, join our group. But when I'm in that group, I can't wait for other people to call me and check in on me, my mentor to call me. And I need to be reaching out and putting my stuff out there and being vulnerable, which of course I can't really do that unless I have that second piece, right? Unless I have healthy people that love me. But hopefully that makes sense.
So much sense. Absolutely awesome, Logan. I have so much enjoyed this interview. I think this was super empowering. I am beyond grateful for you, for that you empowered yourself and are now empowering so many others, and are truly making our world a healthier, happier place. Thank you so much. You're amazing.
Thank you so much for having me, Ruth.
Take care.
If you love and enjoy my podcast, then please do me a favor and help me spread the love and health everywhere. I can't do it without you. Share this podcast with one other person who you know would greatly benefit from it. I know that you were born to live your best life and feel absolutely amazing in your precious body, your brilliant mind, and your boundless soul. So what are you still waiting for? Please make sure you do. I believe in you. I'm your biggest cheerleader. Keep glowing. Much love.